Thank you for coming back for part two. I think I came back on pretty much every single hand I wanted to come back on, so this is cool. And now we're starting to develop some kind of historic between the players, and I'm starting to get a feeling of the tables a bit more, so tough to explain, but I'll try to come back on that. Here, this is this guy who just 4-bet me like a couple of hands ago. This is definitely close, but I don't know if that guy's. Once again, I'm running out of time, but I could have shoved, and I think this is definitely going to be close with the info that I have, whether it's plus EV or not to shove. I think it's going to be about neutral EV. It might be plus EV actually. He doesn't need to have a big 4-bet bluff range basically there for it to be plus EV. Here I decided to call because we were 150 deep. This is definitely my default. He bets flop pretty big and then bets turn pretty big. I don't see any other option than to call. If I was against someone really aggressive, I might shove the turn. Hoping that he calls with draws or he puts me on a draw or something like that, but this is not the case. And the backdoor gets there. It might not look like that big, but with his sizing and stuff, he definitely could have a backdoor there that he's going to barrel, of course. And I don't feel like I'm ever getting exploited by anyone here by folding, because I'm going to have a lot of ace kings in my range. With these stack deepness and these positions, I'm definitely going to call. I'm going to have a lot of ace jacks as well. Ace queen I might call from time to time on the river depending on my read. So folding ace 3 there is definitely standard, and I wouldn't think much. I think flop call is mandatory. The turn call, I think he's going to give up on the river if all the draws miss quite a lot too. If he did have a draw or something like that, just because I'm going to have an ace most of the time if he has a draw himself. So turn call is definitely good as well, and river call with the backdoor getting there would be horrible, I think, without the info. So this is a standard hand, I think, played pretty standard. Decided to bet here. I think he has enough medium strength hands so that I can barrel the turn as well. And he calls again on the turn. He called pretty quick twice for what it's worth. I do think he's going to have a queen much more often than a mid pocket pair, and I don't think he's ever folding a queen with all the draws missing. I'm just going to give up there. And I decided to try a bluff there. And the diamonds getting there is certainly a good card for me. I probably wouldn't try to bluff the spades because he's going to have those a lot himself. But diamonds are perfect, like in the jewelry ad. So yeah, once again I lost that one to this guy once again. But I'm really confident and feeling good about my 2-barrel and then give up with the texture of the board, the exact texture of the board. So yeah, we're developing some kind of pretty aggressive dynamic. This one has had the better on me. I just was in pretty bad spots, but those weren't bad spots that like the previous one where they say that I could have done anything different. You have to differentiate these two kind of bad spots basically. Sometimes you put yourself in a bad spot and you could have avoided it. Now, the last two, the ace-3 and that ace-7 hands, are definitely not going to get in that category, I think. So I don't mind the way I played them. But I do want to keep in mind that, like, you just want two big pots out of me, and depending on the different things that are going to happen pretty soon, I definitely just wanted, like I said, to keep that in mind and see how he reacts to that and anticipate how he reacts to that. That's basically what I wanted to say. Here, this is a great board for me to dunk lead on. Definitely, because it's going to have a lot of draws. It's going to have a lot of queen that he's not going to fold on the flop. I want check raise. This would be way too thin for value. But check calling kind of sucks because a lot of cards, he's going to barrel a lot of cards, and there are a lot of cards like any diamond, any king, 10 of diamonds. Those kind of cards will put me in a guessing spot totally, and I much rather go for value right away on the flop and turn myself and make him call with his draws and all of that stuff. It does suck when I get raised, this is for sure, but I think he calls way more often than he raises. And now he raises pretty small, so I think I can call and see what happens. If one of the draw falls, I might think about trying to represent it, and it might shut him down, and we'll see. I will have a lot of options on turn and river. Like, I'm not going to lose the hand every single time when I just call that for sure. And one other thing about that board about dunk leading is that I'm going to be able to dunk lead ace queen and nines and ace 9 suited very often there, so he cannot like raise me every single time and win the pot every single time if he's a good enough player to recognize that, like my pre-flop range and that kind of stuff. And now he checks the turn. I could go ahead and try river bluff, but the problem here is that he might have a full house from time to time, definitely. He's going to raise all of his two pairs on the flops. Could have something like queen 9 with his sizing, would be very likely. I just decided to give up that one. I don't know why. This is rustiness probably, for sure. And I'm going to raise that one. This is a great board to raise, definitely. But yeah, he might have some full houses there, and he might have some ace kings as well, and he's probably folding ace king, but he might have some lower aces. I might have the best hand from time to time when he checks back, and he might have some full houses and stuff like that. So I don't think betting as a bluff has any value on the river for what it's worth, which is why I decided to. Just check and see what happens. As soon as I dunk lead the flop, which I think once again is a great play for me on that board, I think the rest of the hand pretty much played itself out. Like on the turn, I could not dunk lead because he could have a flush himself. If I dunk lead, I kind of put myself in a very awkward spot. And river, once again, I don't feel like dunk leading is any good. This is great. I flubbed the nuts. I have absolutely no read on that guy. I'm probably going to just slow play. And here, I think with a weak call the flop and the turn, he's going to have a jack pretty often. I'm going to bet big enough so that he folds most of his jacks with the ultimate ace scare card that got there on the turn. With what I've seen so far from that player, I think he's likely to fold more often, jack to a big bet on the river. I think it's going through often enough so that I can make the bluff profitably. Unfortunately, ended up not folding a jack. My read was good. What he would do with his end was off, but he did think about it, so I don't think much of that play by myself. And here what happened? I don't really know. I'm getting dumb. I have no clue what happened pre-flop on the ace-10 hand. And here I'm just going to slow play. If he's bluffing, he's probably bluffing till the hand. If he turned an ace, he's probably not going to even think about me having an 8 there. The ace definitely sucked. But I still think that letting him bluff and all that was my best option there. I think I 3-bet that, and now I check, and now I have 2 seconds. I'm gonna call. Yeah, I definitely 3-bet that. Check calling, I think, is definitely fine there. The only problem is that I have not done a good job of creating any kind of history against that guy, and I have pretty much no clue on how he plays. So I'm likely to be absolutely lost for the rest of the hand there. Here, this is definitely a flop that I want to call, because even though I don't have that much equity, there are so many cards that will give me an opportunity to bluff. That will give me the ability to win the hand even though I don't hit. This is something you definitely want to keep in mind in 3-bet pots. Did he bet? Yeah, 3-bet. I check call, and I was actually wondering what I would do on the turn. I ended up check folding, which is definitely fine, I think. Without historic, this is a fold, definitely. If the turn is not a spade, I'm really not sure what to do, actually. For what it's worth, I would much rather bet here, and this is probably what I would have done if I was not so rusty. I think this is all rustiness of me trying to do too many things by talking and stuff. But this is definitely a spot without any read on the villain, without any elaborated read on how he thinks about poker and how he's likely to approach that hand. I'm much more likely to just bet the flop and simplify my decisions from there. Because as soon as I check, I have absolutely no clue what he's going to bet and if he's going to keep on betting if he has a bluff or that kind of things. And even though in a vacuum, it normally would be the play to like check call and then reevaluate and then try to make the best decision there. And this is definitely something that I would recommend most people to do. If you have historic against someone, you want to approach most of the hands that way. You don't want to simplify too much because simplifying might cut a lot on your EV. But when you have absolutely no read, I think simplifying would have been the better option here because I'm much more likely to make some big mistakes if I check call the flop here, which would be the good play against someone I would have a much better idea of his ranges. So I kind of put myself in a awkward spot. I'm just gonna put that guy the fish tag, so I know he's a fish. And I'm not going to check that time, I'm going to bet that. I'm going to call. This one looks like he's been 4-betting. Yeah, he's 4-betting 18% actually. It's only 129 hands, but it looks like he's going to be very aggressive against my against my 3-bets, and King Jack against a cutoff open is definitely a hand I want to play. Decided to dunk lead here. Once again, this is a really good board for me to represent kind of a draw. I would dunk lead a lot with some kind of draws, definitely. I wanted to bet 32. I'm making all sorts. It's good that it is kind of a video about rustiness because I'm showing a lot of it. I'm not even able to put out normal bets. I definitely wanted to bet bigger there, but good thing I still hit. Even if I did not hit, given that I bet 3 on the turn, I'm definitely going to bluff the river here and hope that he folds some weakish pair that he's going to have. I'm seriously hitting the nuts every fucking time. Every time I'm supposed to have a decision. So yeah, flop, no decision, turn the nuts, no decision again. Coming back on the king jack there, once again, this is a board. By dunk leading here against someone who has shown me that he can raise a dunk lead with some kind of weakish draw like he just did before, I'm definitely dunk lead going broke here. This is definitely what I'm going to do. Or dunk lead calling and then check raise going broke on the turn or something like that. I'm not dunk leading with the intention of like playing the end kind of slowly, which was much more my intention on the ace jack hand, given the stack sizes too. But now this is much closer to 100 big blinds deep. I definitely not mind just going broke there against normal range. I'm definitely going to be good enough, often enough, and against even if it's a very small historic that we've created, he knows that I know now that he can raise with some kind of draws, and I know that he knows that I could like lead with weakish made hands, so he could try to reverse that and raise with a bluff once again and do stuff like that. And I definitely think that leading here will get me the most value because he's going to call with all of his gut shots on the flop. He's going to float them. I could check raise as well. This is a spot where I will definitely check raise and go broke from time to time too. But I felt like dunk leading. He's going to call with all of his jacks, of course, jack 10, jack 8 suited, jack 7 suited, and he might have raised from there. Jack queen, of course, I'm leading against, and the turn is trips, obviously, and dunk leading is once again, I'm pretty much betting on almost any card on turn for what it's worth, because I think the flop calling range is kind of weakish most of the time, and he might call twice with any 9, 9, 10, ace 9, king 9 suited, and that type of stuff as well against me. So I'm gonna try to push my thin value as far as possible here as soon as I've dunk led hit there. This is my approach to the hand, and this is what I think was giving me the most value from what I've seen against that guy so far. And we're getting short-handed. Hopefully it will create some aggressive, interesting opportunities. Yamcha looks like a nit-ish reg. Disham looks like a very aggressive one, and this guy looks like kind of the middle of the two. That's pretty much it as far as my read goes. And coming back on what I was talking in part 1 at the beginning of part 1 what I was talking in the beginning of part 1 about not caring so much about being balanced at those stakes is that most of the players that play 1-2, I think, will tend to go on one side or the other of either folding too much or being too aggressive in spots that don't call for being aggressive, basically. And you want to recognize that as soon as you've recognized whether someone is still playing 1-2 because he's not aggressive enough or because he's too aggressive in random spots, you want to attack them as much as possible on the exploitation side of that, whatever it is, because they usually they're not bad players most of the time. They know how to think, they know how to hand read, they know how to do all that stuff, but the one thing that might be missing a lot on these railers is adaptation. And if you adapt better than them, and if you get more reads than them, and if you are able to exploit them better than they exploit you, they exploit your weaknesses exploit your weaknesses that you've created yourself, basically, just to exploit them, they will have a hard time exploiting back at you. So you can be absolutely unbalanced and just be one step ahead of them most of the time. And this is the important thing, basically, to keep yourself one step ahead of your opponent. And this is what I want to say, is basically that this is a pretty simple process most of the time at those stakes. Here I am going to check raise the turn and shove the river. I don't think he has that many flushes in his range, and I can very well represent the flush myself. And I definitely believe that he has a big part of his range that he's going to be either an over pair there, or like ace queen that decided to bet the turn and then see what happens on the river, go for a thin-ish value, or some combo draw of like ace king that is definitely going to just represent there. Any straight draw, there are a lot of those that he's going to multi-barrel. Any ace of spades naked, he's definitely going to bet that. King of spades naked, he's definitely going to bet that, I think, from what I've seen so far from that guy. So I think there's a big enough part of his range. This is dumb. Just gonna bet 5. Here I think, yeah, the guy limped under the gun, and then this is what happened. He limped, re-raised. I think I'm gonna call once and give up. I'm not expecting to win the hand that often, but I think it's going to be super straightforward on the turn and river. So I think I could check call and check fold if he bets again. Or if he checks, I think he's going to have ace king most of the time, and I'll be able to just win the hand. I don't expect him to bluff at now. I'm just gonna make a random super defensive bet, hope that he angrily calls with ace king or something like that, because I could have missed spades definitely there. I definitely think with all the draws out there, someone that is going to check to limp re-raise, someone that is going to limp re-raise me pre-flop with aces. He had 8-9. This is weird. I did not expect that. I had absolutely no clue, and I still have. He's from the Philippines. That might explain some things. But yeah, like, he's definitely not getting tricky with aces by checking the turn on a drawy board like that. Someone who could be limp re-raising aces is definitely not going to do that, from my experience. So on the river, I don't think I ever like get shoved. I think as soon as he checks the turn, like I said, this is a spot where I'm calling the flop kind of reluctantly, because I don't feel like I'm going to win the pot that often. But I'm pretty much never ever going to get bluffed out of the best hand. So it makes my flop call definitely plus EV. And on the river, draws have missed, and I think firing a small bet there is going to be very plus EV as compared to just checking and hoping to win. I think this is going to make a definite difference in your win rate if you start doing that kind of thing, especially against bad players or against even against regulars. Just when you feel like you're not supposed to get called on a value bet, just throw a weird small value bet. This is definitely not the first time that I've done that in my videos, but it pays a lot, and it might not look like much, but I did make 11 big blinds there with that very small value bet, especially as like the bigger the pot, the more important it is to make that kind of thing and to get yourself some value out of those. I'm just gonna fold here. I have no clue. Like, dr.giggy has looked pretty balanced so far. In position on me, I decided not to get into a big war against him, which is definitely not a big deal. I could have decided to go into a big war, decided not to. I don't like, he hasn't abused his position. He kind of treated me more often than not, and he's probably weakish, but he hasn't abused so far. And from what I've seen, I expect him to be playing pretty well, even post-flop in the 3-bet pots and position, so I don't want to get myself into too big of pots, being out of position. There's no H in there myself. This jam, on the other hand, looks a bit too aggressive for what it's worth, and I'm definitely happy with calling and then doing some stuff like on that board, just dunk leading. I definitely think that if he has nothing at all, which he's gonna have quite a lot, even ace king, he's most likely to fold on that type of board, because I could be dunk leading with a lot of things for sure. And this is a pretty cheap bluff for what it's worth, because this is definitely a one bullet bluff. I mean, all I'm doing here is making him fold his air, and I feel like on that board, like I said, he can't make any kind of play really, because he can't raise fold because I have way too many draws in my range, but he can't really raise, like, he can't raise with air because I'm going to have good hand too often. I'm just going broke too often, basically. This is spot kind of like the ace-8 in part 1, where I'm definitely going to check this one, and it's going to simplify my decisions for sure. This guy, yeah, he's forbidding quite a lot. For some reason, I decided to just let him do it. So this is cheap bluff, definitely a one bullet, but from what I've seen on his pre-flop ranges so far, he's likely to have nothing at all very often there, because I think he's 3-betting very, very wide, and pre-flop, calling is pretty much my only option, because I have a good enough hand that I can play out of position. I really don't mind it. The board just gave me a great opportunity to attack a one bullet and make him fold all of his air that he had 3-bet me with pre-flop. So I'd much rather take that kind of line and attack that kind of board than get into a pre-flop 4-betting war, and then he's gonna 5-bet shove over me sometimes as a bluff, and then it's just a guessing war unless I have a shitload of stats on him and I know he's perfect pre-flop ranges by position, but I definitely don't have that on him with 144 hands, so I don't want to, like I said, get into a pre-flop war, which is much more of a guessing game. I would much rather use what I would consider as probably an edge post-flop and make that kind of plays fire, that kind of cheap bluff, where I take back the initiative and I just pretty much cut all of his options short. And this is definitely the kind of play that I think not enough people make. I'm gonna call that because I look very strong being multi-way, and I could be able to run a big bluff at some point in that hand. And I definitely like the queen, because I don't think with his pre-flop stats that he's going to have Jack 10 from there. If he bets again, I'm putting him on very likely an overpair, big overpair, or 8s or 9s, because I look really strong myself and I could have Jack 10 now, and I'm not supposed to have a lot of hands that I'm going to fold on the turn there, given that I think we were 4-1 the flop. So I think it's going to happen a lot that he was just taking a stab because he was last to act on the flop, and then I will be able to, like on that kind of card on the turn, he's going to go check, and then I'll be able to go ahead on the river and represent a big slow played hand or something like that, because I would definitely slow play set there. But now that he bets again, I think his range is definitely strong with the queen getting there. Just because he would probably be scared of trying a big bluff most of the time there. I think from what I've seen from that guy, I don't have that much info, but it's my general feeling, and I have to go with that because I don't have anything else basically. And I think now I can fold, but I definitely don't regret my flop play. Here I'm going broke. And here I decided to call again and flop nothing and keep it simple. Yeah, coming back on the ace-10 hand, this is, like I said, definitely type of play that not enough people make. To be able to recognize a spot where you are going to cut all of the options of your opponent with a big part of his range, you definitely want to go ahead, and no matter what kind of line it is, if you feel like, if you put yourself into your opponent's shoes, which is something that I'm talking a lot most of the time in my videos, and then you think about, okay, what would I have myself in that kind of spot, and what could I do if he makes that play on me? And I've been able to do that there, and even myself, I mean, if I have nothing there and I get a lead on, I think I'm going to be unbalanced on what I will be able to play back with and stuff like that. I think I just have to fold way too often. So this is a perfect spot to attack, of course, and I decided to go ahead and do that, and it worked out perfectly. Here this was kind of dumb from me. I decided to bet pretty big on the turn. I want to check raise because I think he's going to check back a lot of ace X on the flop. So I'm going to check raise that flush. He's definitely going to bet the ace X, and then he's going to be in a weird spot. Yeah, I think he's a reg just because I've seen the name around, I think on that board with like ace-6 with no spades, this is kind of standard to just check back or delay a c-bet or something like that. And if he knows that who I am, and if he knows that I'm super aggressive and stuff, I might be able to build a much bigger pot by check raising the turn, of course. And now it kind of sucks as river, of course. I think he's going to call with pretty much every single of his spades, and I don't think he's going to call with anything else. So I'm going to bet pretty big, and hoping that he has a spade and that he feels like I'm bluffing, basically. Yeah, it ended up having the queen of spades, which he was definitely not folding. But yeah, felt like I definitely feel like he should bet that flop. He has way too good of a hand to check that. It worked out for him. But there are boards, if the board like is not an ace-high board, if you make it something like queen, 10, 4, I think I'm much more likely to just lead the turn than check raise, because I would kind of look stronger by check raising on those kind of boards. On the ace-10, 4, people just tend to have a super hard time folding the ace top pair if they check the flop, because they feel like they've induced if the turn is a break, and then they get check raised. And I felt like if he knew who I am, like I said, it was definitely going to, I would be able to build a bigger pot by check raising the turn than by leading the turn. And here I think a lot of this player's range is going to be middle pocket pairs, and I think I decided to check back the flop because he looks like he knows what he's doing. He looks like he's a bit too aggressive from what I've seen. He's standing on the not folding enough. He's going to that category from what I've seen so far. But those players who are not folding enough definitely tend to be kind of better hand readers than the ones who are just folding too much most of the time. And I decided to delay a c-bet there because I think this guy, from what I've seen so far, is likely to view a turn c-bet as a bit stronger, because he probably feels like I'm going to bet 100% of my air on the flop there if I have air. So we might check call once with like pocket 8, and then I'm kind of fucked because I'm not sure if I have to barrel again, because he does have a lot of ace-x in his range for sure. But when he checks twice, it makes it much more easier for me to start barreling, turn plus river, trying to represent ace-6 that decide to check the turn as well, Or here, the second ace definitely gives me the option to try and represent queens or kings that I might try to value against tens or jacks or stuff like that. I'm going to just lead here. I think he's going to call with like jack queen or something like that from time to time. And I want to keep the price small, and if I hit my draw, I want to be able to lead again and make him call with two pairs instead of like check calling and then leading, which would look a bit stronger, I think, and would make him fold a bit more hands if I hit. I think I can get more calls the times that I hit when I do go ahead and lead the turn. And he could have clubs draw, of course, pretty often, so I'm valuing against stuff as well. And I don't mind getting raised because I definitely have enough equity against pretty much any kind of raise there from those positions, that type of guy with that stack size and that pot size. So I think leading the turn is a bit better than check calling again, which would be, I think, the default option from most players. Probably not that long left to that video. I think it's been pretty good. A lot of good, interesting stuff happening. I haven't been able to go into big wars with the regulars on those tables, and they're only small. I went for only small moves most of the time, and I decided to keep on 3-betting until they basically stop 4-betting me, because they can't 4-bet me forever, because they feel like this is definitely a meta game spot where someone is 4-betting me a lot at the beginning of a session, and I'm just folding and folding. I don't want to stop 3-betting, because most of the time at some point, if I keep 3-betting, they will feel like I'm doing it for value, or because, yeah, I'm either doing it for value or because I want to play back at the 4-bet, so I might 5-bet shove light and bluff them. So most of the time, I think meta game wise, it is good to keep 3-betting your trash against someone who's 4-bet you a lot and you feel like he's been bluffing you at the beginning of a session, or he was just running two ends, but he knows that you have the feeling that he was bluffing. There's a guy asking me for heads. That's cool. But no, thanks. À cracheur. I will keep. It's one of my adjustments. Like the standard adjustment would either be to stop 3-betting or go super aggressive, move the aggression factor up a notch. But I feel like continuing to 3-bet with trash is definitely good against a lot of players until proven otherwise. Because they will stop at some point, because they will feel like they can't do it forever. So this is cool that I had a way of showing that. And here I pretty much have nothing at all, but I think I can represent a random jack, and I think he's just going to fold some random pairs that are in there from time to time. So cool. One thing that I've done pretty well in those two videos in that series, I feel like, is picking up all the pots that nobody wanted to, basically. All the multi-way pots that I was able to fire on like turn plus river and that kind of thing, where it was checked around the flop, fire, turn, river, checked around the flop, I fire, turn, everyone folds. This kind of situation is definitely something that will boost your win rate quite a lot, and something that most players at mid stakes, 50 cent dollar and 1-2 definitely don't do enough. Something I think is a big strength in my game, and like I said, that will definitely boost your win rate. For what it's worth, I think I totally screwed up that hand, the 6-9. I definitely did, because I decided to bet on the flop thinking that I will second barrel often, because I really feel like he's calling with like ace queen on that flop. If he decided to call with ace queen pre-flop, which I think he's going to do quite a lot. So I was betting the flop with the intention of second barreling, and then for some reason I kind of choked on my plan, which is something I will tend to do when I'm still rusty, like just overthinking a random spot and then not going on my first plan, my first instinct, which usually when you create a plan for a hand, your first instinct is likely to be pretty good. I did not do that there, and I think just betting the flop is kind of a mistake, because it's just pretty much folding nothing at all that he called. With pre-flop, basically with those stack sizes in those positions. So I think the flop bet on that 6-9 suited hand was a total disaster. I should have just given up or gone for 2 barrels at least. So yeah, that was a mistake. But meanwhile, I did show a pretty good example of, once again, what I was talking about, of picking up the dead corpses that nobody wants a piece of. You've got the reg here who's raising, the fish who's calling, and then I call, which is obviously standard. And then the flop comes king 8-8, decide to check, which is obviously standard once again. Check, check, check. Turn is an ace. I could go ahead and start bluffing here, because I feel like my hand is no longer good. I could represent something pretty good, but the problem is the fish is not likely to fold an ace, and this guy might not fold one either. I'm going to raise that. So I decide to check and see what happens, and probably just give up when it's not working. And then it goes check, 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 and I'll come back on the river decision. I have to take a decision here. He dunk leads twice and then call a pretty big raise on the turn. I think he rivered a full house from time to time, definitely. He could have ace jack, he's not folding that. I don't want a bit too big because his range is pretty strong. I don't think betting would be any good when he calls the turn. I don't think river would be profitable here, a river bluff. And this jam folds when I have aces, which sucks obviously. And the river, yeah, the river is the important part of that hand for sure. The thing is, I don't think the fish is likely to have an ace, because he would probably bet it just for protection, being last to act on the turn. And I definitely think this guy could have an ace pretty often, this regular, from what I've seen from him. But he can't really call because he's kind of in a sandwich, and I definitely can represent a strong hand. Someone could have a queen. I think my hand is really rarely good at that point, but I think I can make that guy fold an ace and both guys fold a queen with a pot-sized bet. So this is a very good job, I think, on my part of, once again, picking up the pot that nobody wanted to pick up, basically. Okay, I'm definitely going to call this 3-betting way too often. I think I can. He's only at 8%. I thought it was worse than that. But yeah, still king queen is pretty good, even in those positions. I'll see his fold a 3-bet. It's at 62 and his 4-bets that's 14. He's 4-betting quite a lot. I'm going to go broke there. 4-betting enough for me to go broke, I think. I'm just going to give up that. And I don't think the post left stacks are any relevant with the number of hands I have. This is a spot where I have a bit of a better feeling on how he's going to react when I check, so I think it's better for me to check and reevaluate here than when I did it in part 1 against Colonel Guy with my ace 10 on queen 10x with 2 spades. So I'm probably going to check call, and I'm probably not going to fold this one because I've created a bit more strategy against that guy, and I expect him to be pretty aggressive, and I don't expect him to have a jack that often in his pre-flop range. And I do have a backdoor diamond, which is pretty important, which is going to allow me to still go broke even if a diamond comes. This definitely sucks though. Is very quick bet on the turn. I was planning on not folding, but at the speed at which he bet, good thing I have some kind of time bank. At the speed at which he bet, I feel like he did not have much of a decision there, and I definitely feel like he's going to just bet and wow, that's cool. Oh, thank you. Bet and don't have a decision basically when he's pretty strong there. When he has a jack and he's just, okay, I'm gonna bet. I think this is a spot where he has to think about bluffing before bluffing if he decides to bluff. He could have 5-6 suited as well too. And it looks like he didn't even think about his sizing either, so I don't think he has a draw that often, because I expect him to be thinking about whether he's going to commit himself or not if he has a draw there. I think this is a lot of extrapolation out of only a timing tell on the turn, but I feel like he bet just so quick on the turn. I hope I'm not wrong. I hope I did not like imaginate that quickness of the bet on the turn. Your player should show it. No, I don't think it shows. Timing tells. But anyways, I think he bet so quick that, like I said, he did not even have a decision in his mind. And I think his mind was clear that he was going broke most of the time when he bet that quick without even looking at the sizing, because he's going to definitely look at his sizing if he has any kind of draw there. Unless he has super big combo draw. But the big combo draws are being cut a lot by my 9 of diamonds. So I could have ace queen of diamond, something like that. Is definitely not even going to think about it and just go broke. But I feel like he's going to have something like ace jack and king jack and jack and suited much more often. And just told himself, okay, I'm going broke, I'm going to bet and shove river and go broke no matter what. And I think he gave me a pretty big timing tell on the turn. This is definitely a spot for anyone to think about if they're going to bluff the turn against someone who's 3-bet and then check call the turn. It's not that standard of line. If they want to bluff, they're definitely going to think about it for a while. So I'm really confident that my timing tell was good there, and that the change of plan that I had of folding instead of going broke is definitely the right idea. We'll never know which kind of sucks. I might have just gone broke just to prove my point, but I'm really confident, and I'm rarely wrong on that type of stuff. And I think it will basically conclude my 2-part series of 5 tables of 1-2. I hope you liked it. I'm going to play those ends. Hope you liked it. I might have skipped some hands that I've played because I was talking about other stuff. If I did, please come back. I'm going to go broke with that ace queen against this jam in the blind. He's definitely aggressive enough for me to do that. I'm not doing that against a lot of guys, but against that one, I feel like this is the way I'm going to get the most value out of my hand. So yeah, any questions, post them in the comments section, and I will answer and all of that. I could bet here, but I don't feel like betting will accomplish much. I really don't like betting, actually, because I just feel like I have the best in pretty often, and I could actually induce a bluff more often by checking here, and I could make more value by trying to induce a bluff and then calling down with ace high from time to time, from what I've seen of that guy, than by betting on the flop. The turn was absolutely a gin card, of course, and the river I don't think I can ever fold. This is definitely not a good river for my hand. There were a lot more better rivers that could have come. Looks like he has a decision. I think he's going to bluff very often. On the turn, when I check the flop, he's definitely going to just a second. This is pretty thin value. Yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it kind of sucked, I think. The thing is, I felt like if he had me beat there, he was going to just fire a standard size value bet and hope that I had a queen or a jack or something like that. I did not feel like it was going to do that with a hand like aces, but kudos on his part. He ended up being a level ahead of me. I thought that by shoving here, he would have something like king queen much more often than aces. Of course, I didn't put him on aces, and I kind of excluded aces and kings out of his range. And I thought that he was going to definitely bet on the turn. He was going to bet a lot of bluffs, and a lot of those bluffs are something that the jack will hit from time to time. And I thought I had the best hand pretty much always, especially with my ace of clubs. There aren't that many combos of flushes left. So I thought I had the best hand pretty much always, and I felt like if he had something like a straight with king 10 or that type of hand, he was going to bet big and hope that I have just some kind of queen or jack. And I decided to shove because I felt like I wasn't representing much by shoving, and it would probably feel like I was super polarized. Because like I said, that type of player who I think leads on the not folding enough side of balance, is being unbalanced that way, is a good hand reader, and those type of players will definitely try to make some hero calls, and I think he would polarize my range a lot. And I felt like he would call with king queen when I thought was a pretty big part of his range with his long timing plus small bet. I thought he had king queen a lot, or something like ace jack or jack 10 that wanted some cheap value out of like 7x or pocket 8s or 9x that decided to, maybe not 9x, I'm definitely going to bet the flop with that, but or maybe ace jack myself. I'm going to have a queen 2 or maybe ace x with the ace of clubs that I might try to turn into a bluff, and then he would bet call those because I'm not representing much when I'm shoving. I just felt like I had the best hand and he would make some big hero calls, so I decided to shove, and it was ended up not working. I'm still not sure about the play. I feel pretty good about it, but it definitely was super thin, and it might be pretty close to 0 EV, or might be a bit in the negative EV side. So that's it. That was pretty interesting to wrap up the videos. Hope you enjoyed it. This is Jiggy, who wishes you the best of luck for 2011, guys.